So Kingsmead Special School offers a range of specialist provision and provides 90 places for pupils aged 11 to 16. As part of Derby City Council SEND strategy, Living My Best Life, we're going to increase the age range from 11 to 16 up to 7 to 18 from September 2023. The proposal would result in 20 extra primary places being created in year groups 5 and 6, making a maximum of 110 pupils at the school. In addition, the proposal is for a small number of post-16 places to be provided on a personalised individual basis within the 90 secondary places available. So it's a very positive proposal, and it aims to increase specialist school places, obviously locally, bringing further provision into the city to meet the growing demand. The additional capacity will result in greater potential for children to access provision locally within Derby. The governing body of Kingsmead Special Schools, supported by the council, has carried out the statutory consultation on the proposal, and the responses are set out in Appendix 2 of the report. A decision is now needed on the proposal, and the report recommends approval to extend the age range and size of Kingsmead Special School from September 2023, creating more opportunities for children and young people with SEND to attend a local school, obviously rather than going great distances to very expensive placements. This is just all round a positive thing, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby. Anybody else like to speak on this item? The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note this report. Okay, all those in favour of the report as printed then, please. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Item 10, the statutory consultation outcome on the viability of Ashgate Nursery School. Some excellent pieces of work being done since the new administration took control of the council. Thank you for everybody involved in turning this piece of work around so quickly and moving towards a positive conclusion. Councillor Whitby.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. So, Chair, early years is one of the educational areas where we are ahead of our comparators. We cannot afford to lose any of our nursery schools. For the best part of 50 years, Ashgate Nursery School has been improving the life chances of generations of children and supporting their parents in one of Derby's more deprived areas. Its educational offer is good, and Ofsted have rated the school as good for the last decade. The school is federated with Central Nursery, and it is Central's historic role as a recipient of enhanced resource for SEND children, and then the removal of the enhanced resource, that has been the catalyst for both schools' budgetary problems. And to some extent, they've been a victim of their own success, as children with additional needs have continued to be referred to both schools because of their excellent reputations. The responses to the two consultations were overwhelming. 91% on the original consultation were against the closure, and 100% on the statutory consultation were against the closure. And our own petition we did, Chair, for the Labour Party, we got over 1,000 signatories to our petition, so there was wide public support. We had to publicly announce that the school was going to remain open before the end of this term, so that the school can plan for future terms, future intake, and of course parents will naturally want to plan ahead and know that there will be a school for their children to attend in the months to come. In relation to the scrutiny recommendation, I appreciate the concern not to impact on other schools and other schools' budgets, and I share that concern. The prudent thing to do is to keep Ashgate Nursery open and allow it to deal with its own deficit. If we close it, Chair, the debt is written off, and that could then affect other budgets. So the recommendations on the paper are relatively straightforward. They are to approve a decision not to close Ashgate Nursery and to delegate authority to the Strategic Director for People Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member to undertake an appraisal to develop options to address the financial deficits at Ashgate Nursery School and Central Nursery School. I'd also like to say, Chair, I was concerned by the piece in the Telegraph yesterday, I presume it was, relating to Ashgate for a couple of reasons. The first, that it seeks to undermine a school that was on the brink of closure anyway. I mean, what are they trying to do? You know, they tried to close the school, we're going to keep it open, and they're still trying to destabilise the whole process and put fear and doubt into the heads of parents. The second concern I have the Conservatives got a collective amnesia? Because it was only about 5 or 6 weeks ago they were going to close the school. And there's a quote I'm assuming the quote's correct, nobody wants to see a nursery close. Well, we don't, Chair, and we're not going to close it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitby. Councillor Poulter, do you want to go through the exec scrutiny recommendations at this stage?
Yes, please, Chair. The initial proposal was to have to close this nursery because there is a deficit between the two nurseries of £400,000, a serious amount of money. Work has been carried out with the two nurseries to try and eradicate that deficit without success. The Scrutiny Board last night noted that the report itself contains
Councillor Poulter, can you stick to the recommendations? Otherwise, I am going to stop you and move on with the meeting. Just focus on the recommendations, please.
I'm just giving the background to the reasons.
Focus on the recommendations, please.
I'm giving the background to the reasons.
I don't need the background to the recommendations. We can all read the report. We all have read the report. Either focus on the recommendations or be silent.
Okay, so the committee felt that as there were no answers, no solutions within this report, it's a purely, we're going to try and save it. Their concern was around the effect on other schools. So the recommendations read, they recommend to Council Cabinet that no cuts or closures be made to Central Nursery School or any other nursery school or education establishment to secure funding for Ashgate Nursery School, and to recommend that Council Cabinet be provided with the details and that they then consider the financial impact on all other nurseries and on every early years pupil of keeping Ashgate Nursery open. In effect, £100 per head for every nursery student in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Poulter. I'll ask our Finance Director to come in a second, but correct me, Alison, if I'm incorrect, but I would have thought, had the previous proposals to continue with the closure of the nursery, then that deficit would have needed to be written off or funded elsewhere, which would have potentially had an impact on other nurseries places across the city if the nursery was closing. The fact we're endeavouring and taking steps forward to keep the nursery open, that debt will need to be paid off and not written off, so not impacting any other nursery.
That's correct, Chair. If the nursery school was to close, the deficit would need writing off.
Thank you for that confirmation. Thank you, Councillor Whitby, for your contribution and the excellent work you've done to safeguard the future of Ashgate Nursery. I'll bring Councillor Hazelgrave in 1 second. I think that last question I asked and the answer we've got proves to me the recommendations from the Exec Scrutiny Board aren't really relevant to this paper, so maybe there was some misunderstanding how the debt would be dealt with if the nursery stays open as it is. There is no impact on other nurseries. Councillor Hazelgrave.
Yes, Councillor Poulter referred to an accumulated debt by the two nurseries of £400,000, which happened on their watch. Why weren't steps taken earlier, one might ask? I don't want to get into the minds of former members of the Cabinet. But what was behind that? Did they just want the school to accrue a debt until they had no option but to close it? Couldn't they have forestalled that by setting in actions and advice at a much earlier stage? I'm just asking questions, but I think they may need answers.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelgrave. You can probably take those questions and ask the previous administration time, which is
I can answer
convenient
that
to
for you, Chair, if you
No,
like.
thank
because
you. No, thank you. No, thank you, Councillor Poulter.
We've
No.
been working for 2 years with them on
No, thank you,
exactly
Councillor
that problem.
Poulter. If you want to continue taking part in this meeting, Councillor Poulter, please speak with the permission of the Chair.
Well, I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to help you, Chair, with answer
All
your
those-
members'
no.
questions.
Okay, let's move to the vote on this one. Excellent news, great piece of work, Councillor Whitby. All those in
Where's the money
favour
coming from?
of the report? That's unanimous again. Thank you. We put the mic on. Key decisions, item 11. Food safety, food standards, animal feed and health and safety service plan. I'm not sure who's taking it. Councillor Khan. Sorry, Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report that's required by the FSA, and I went through it with the officers. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with it, but I understand that it went before the Scrutiny Committee, and our Chief Exec wanted some clarification on point 11.13, which the officers have clarified with him, and I reiterate that it is a low risk of that happening. The other issues I understand were raised by Councillor Kerr. One of the issues she raised was about the backlog. Well, look, it's understandable that with the COVID pandemic, there was going to be work accumulating, as it did in most other departments. But there is COVID mitigation funding there. The only problem they're having at the moment is recruiting the right personnel. But it is not something that, they're not actively trying to do. They are looking to recruit personnel to catch up with the backlog. I understand that there was another note which Councillor Kerr wanted to change, which was to go from Public Health England to call it UK Health Security Agency, which I don't have a problem with. The fact that, this has been coming for the last 6 years in this format, and nobody asked for changes, but we're quite happy to oblige with the changes that Councillor Kerr has asked for, and the Appendix 1 will be updated. I hope that's satisfactory to those concerned.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. It's a pretty standard report to come forward to Cabinet. All those in favour of recommendations as printed at 2.1 to 2.3? Thank you. So we get item 12, Derby City Youth Justice Plan 23-24. Councillor Whitby again.
It's all me, Chair. Me. Those people who've been on CYP for any time in the past will have seen this report coming annually, but it is here to, as coming to Cabinet is a part of receiving a grant. So that's why it's coming to this report. It's the standard sort of report, Youth Justice Plan, and the purpose of the report is to approve the annual Youth Justice Plan to enable the Council to receive Youth Justice Board funding for Derby's Youth Offending Service this financial year. The Youth Offending Service is our statutory multi-agency team who supervise young people and have received a youth court sentence. The performance is good, and our last external inspection of the service rated it as good in 2018. The grant will be approximately £500,000 per annum. However, the Ministry of Justice has not yet confirmed the exact amount, and we anticipate confirmation within the next month. This is the first year that the Youth Justice Plan has needed to be signed off by the Council Cabinet. In previous years, it had gone to CYP. The annual Youth Justice Plan provides an overview of how services are delivered to meet the 3 key performance indicators that the youth offending services are measured on. That's to prevent offending and first-time entrance to the youth justice system, to prevent re-offending, and to reduce use of custody. The plan is deliberately comprehensive, and I think it's 63 pages long, and is required to outline local arrangements for the following: governance arrangements, operational facilities and resources, partnership board arrangements including plans for board development, key performance insight and metrics, workforce learning and development plans, how the plan aligns to other strategic plans, how the service will integrate as child first vision and incorporate voice of the child to inform service delivery, service development plan outlining what improvements will be made. The report accompanying the plan provides further details on the content, and I recommend the Cabinet approves the plan this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you again, Councillor Whitby. Item 12, the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. Do you have any other contributions? Councillor Heselgrave.
Looking at the key improvement areas, key improvement area 2, fewer children and young people reoffend to provide safer communities through effective intervention, and a number of activities that are going to take place to achieve that. We all know that our children have suffered in all sorts of ways, in every aspect of their lives, because of the COVID pandemic, their inability to meet in school, to undertake their learning. It was remote learning. Anything we can do to make sure those children who are more vulnerable because of that avoid going into the justice system, the better, and that there's wraparound support. So I think this is a really, really encouraging plan to deliver that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heselgrave. Okay, all those in favour of the report at item 12 and the recommendation. Recommendations at 2.1. Thank you, Cabinet. Okay, moving on to key decision at, sorry, not a key decision now. Contract and financial procedures matters, item 13. I'm going to ask Alison Parkin to talk us through this. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. There are 4 items on this month's report. The first one is in relation to some additional funding of £270,000 from the Department for Education in relation to a staying close offer for care experienced young people. So the Derby City's Care Leaving Service has made a bid for some national funding and the programme to offer extended support for young people who have care experience and have spent periods living in residential care, and that's to reduce the risks of eviction and homelessness in later life. The plan in regard to the Staying Close programme funding received by the Department of Education would be to recruit some staff, 2 full-time equivalent personal advisors to lead on the transition work, and a part-time therapeutic social worker who will oversee the operational work and to ensure the work is planned in a trauma-enforced basis. The programme will support 10 young people over the course of the 2 financial years. The second part of the report is in relation to a licence deficit. So it's to seek approval for a licence deficit for Harrington Nursery School. Licence deficits are approved where there's been significant reduction in pupil numbers and overspends have arisen. The maximum period for any allowable deficit is 3 years, and that's 5% of a school's revenue budget. And the school's requested a licence deficit of £19,000 just for 1 financial year for 23-24, and that represents 4.9 of their revenue budget, and the school will have removed the deficit by 24-25. The second item is in relation to two additions to the capital programme. Sorry, the third item, two additions to the capital programme. The first is in relation to £24,000 zip wire and balance beam at Sinfin Park, where we have a Sinfin Park and the Local Nature Reserve Friends Group have raised funds for play improvement areas, which includes the installation of those that equipment. And the council is to receive £24,000. Derby Homes contributing 10,000 and 14 through the Friends Group. And the next item is on a similar vein to this. So that's another additional to the capital programme, but that's play area improvements at Chaddesden Park of 17,000. And the Friends of Chaddesden Park have carried out two consultations with the local community and showed that there was some need for some play improvements, and the Friends Group have since been fundraising and working alongside the council to improve the play area, and the council's to receive £17,000 from the Friends of Chaddesden Park as a contribution towards those play area improvements. And finally, we have a proposal of a loan to Quad in the city centre of 150,000, and the Quad is a key cultural organisation in Derby, providing opportunity for engagement in visual art, film and education. In 21-22, the Quad reached over 500,000 people through its programme. However, the audience agency data from spring 2023 has highlighted that there are pressures facing arts and cultural organisations across the nation, particularly as audiences are slow to return from post-pandemic the post-pandemic and has been stalled by the cost of living crisis. The Quad is implementing an organisational review to address the short-term budgetary shortfall and to establish the longer-term sustainability. And to support that cash flow, the request is for the City Council to support them through a loan of £150,000.
Thank you, Alison. The Exec Scrutiny Board made a recommendation in relation to the two parks and open spaces capital programme items. Councillor Poulter, would you like to?
Thank you. In relation to the addition of the two new schemes to the Parks and Open Space and Capital Programme, the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to ask the Council Cabinet to welcome the contributions of the Friends of the Parks groups around the city, and in particular these two projects, which have been developed over the last few months and years, and they are excellent examples. So just show appreciation of the volunteers that work on our parks, and without whom we wouldn't be able to develop them and keep them as good as they are. So I wondered if maybe Cabinet would like to join me in a round of applause, appreciating that effort of the Friends of the Park, and congratulate Councillor Dinser, who's the Cabinet member responsible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Poulter. Absolutely endorse the recommendation, accept that from the Executive Scrutiny Board. There are excellent Friends groups across our city, including these two, one of which is the ward myself and Councillor Peatfield represent, and we know the excellent work they do firsthand, and involving Friends groups in other activities of the council moving forward would be a very positive move if this council can do that and incorporate it into other activities that we do. Councillor Dinser and then Councillor Peatfield.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Totally endorse what you said. As a Cabinet member, this one from Parks, I think it's universally appreciated, the work that our Parks officers do, but most importantly, the volunteers that are working in nearly 400 parks and open spaces we've got, and nearly everywhere there are Friends of groups and volunteers who work with our officers to deliver an effective and sort of enjoyable green space for our citizens. And even before Councillor Poult shared the recommendations and appreciation of the Executive Scrutiny Board, I was ready to celebrate and congratulate on this occasion the two Friends of groups at Chaddersden Park and Sinfin Moor Park in terms of the efforts they've made to raise funds to make our parks and green spaces more enjoyable, more accessible, and find funding that often we can't find as council in a situation where over a decade now, central government have starved local government of funding, which has meant that we're having to make cuts and take short corners for all sorts of activities, including our parks facilities. So I commend the Friends of Groups for Chaddersden Park and Sinfin Moor in their efforts to help us to provide the best service we can for our park and open spaces.
Thank you, Councillor Dinser. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to also extend our huge thanks, especially to our friends of Sinfin Moor Park who worked tirelessly to replace the zip wire that Woody the Woodpecker, now nationally famous, destroyed the previous zip wire. Equally as famous is our Colin, who chairs the Sinfin Moor Friends group, often known as Mr. Sinfin. You know, they are an absolutely integral part of our community. I'd also like to thank the Sinfin and Osbaston Neighbourhood Board who contributed to that as well. But I'll move on to the quad item 4 and just have a few words to say about that. You know, obviously quad has been impacted by the slower recovery from COVID than had hoped. The cost of living crisis obviously is exacerbated people's natural return to going to the cinema and other entertainment venues. But of course, the inflation boom, if you want to put it politely, that came last year meant that their costs have increased as well. This short-term loan is a cash flow fix for them while they implement structural and operational changes, including staffing and opening hours, which obviously is a shame, but you know, these things have to happen in these kind of times. They aim to reduce overheads, but also to increase income-generating opportunities, especially around family entertainment possibilities. The sustainability plan includes increasing the internal events calendar, as I say, with focus on family audiences. And they've also launched a fundraising campaign aiming to raise about £30,000 to support the upgrade of equipment from within the building as well. You know, on a personal note, I think that everyone in this room has probably enjoyed something at the quad at some point or another, even if it's a coffee and a cake. But actually, they provide an absolutely vital service to this city, but they are a cornerstone of our cultural offering. And we, as a full council, have to accept the part that we have played over the last 10 years in the change of footfall in that area, which obviously has had a knock-on effect. So I think it's only right and proper that we help our partners in their time of need. And we know that in better times to come, hopefully shortly, next year, that, you know, that they will repay us and the city back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peatfield. Got a few more people indicating wanting to speak. Councillor Prosser.
Sorry. On that, obviously the quad do some great work and their work is often spread around the country. A lot of people here won't be aware of their work often in Leicester and other places. But I really just want to ask, is it a genuine loan that we expect to get repaid, or like other vast amounts of money they have received in the past, will this be written off in the future? Thank you.
I can answer that. I think, Alison, yeah, absolutely. It's a loan and the terms will be negotiated by our officers. and it's expected it's paid back. Councillor Hesler.
I'd just like to start by echoing the thanks to all the community groups connected with parks, and notably in my ward, Friends of Abbey Green Spaces, for all the work they do day in, day out, quietly keeping the parks in a good condition on behalf of other residents and drawing other residents into that activity. I think it's really a tremendous example of civic responsibility. But I also want to talk about the quad loan. On 10.2, the socio-economic implications, talks also about the outreach work that it does, which is very important. And it says, Quad also work with other cultural organisations to deliver creative activity for young people in our communities. And that's really important, isn't it? Echoing yet again what I said earlier about what our young people have gone through and the absolute necessity for them to be able to engage in cultural activities in groups other than and wider than their friends. So it's a really important thing that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hesselgrave. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Actually, through a little bit of translation work I've done, I'm aware that the situation with Quad with regard to sort of post-COVID recovery in terms of audiences is actually quite common across much of Europe. So whilst we know we've got difficulties that are very specific to Derby in terms of the city centre, the football, the cultural front, I'm convinced that in this particular instance, this is just part of a general phenomenon, and I'm convinced that eventually those audiences will pick up. And I think it's worth remembering that I'm sure they will repay the loan, but it's also worth remembering that you know, Quad is not like a commercial cinema. It shows a lot more experimental and arts films. It supports that basic infrastructure of filmmaking and other creative activities that actually are like a vital infrastructure for the creative industries in this country, which is actually one of our biggest exports. And also, if you want to promote Britain and even Derby, I know Councillor Peatfield was recently referring to a film that was made in Derby at the School of the Deaf that they're showing currently, I think. If you want to promote Derby, if you want to promote the UK and all we're proud of in this country, then there is no better medium than film. So I think it's quite right that at this time we support Quad, and we look forward to seeing them thrive in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions. So recommendations are printed for item 13 at 2.1 through to 2.7. All those in favour? Thank you. It's approved. Okay, moving on to performance at item 14, the annual report and review of performance for 22-23. Oh no, we've not got Sarah. What are we going to do? Heather.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm really pleased to present the Council's annual report, which summarises progress against our Council plan over the last 12 months, in particular against the 4 priority themes of Green City, City of Growth, Resilient City and Vibrant City. Cabinet receives regular performance updates throughout the year on our progress. However, what this document does is highlights, I think in a user-friendly fashion, for residents, businesses and other stakeholders, some of those achievements, and it is supported by a more detailed appendix of information if anybody is interested. The annual report also, I'm sure the annual report also includes information on our use of resources and the budget outturn. And as part of good governance, we will be presenting this to the Audit and Governance Committee later this month. Overall, I'm sure you'll agree that there's some really significant achievements in here, not least the opening of Moorway Sports Village, our collaborative cost of living response and support for vulnerable people, opening of the Nuclear Skills Academy. We've also developed the proposal for the East Midlands Combined Authority, And finally, Derby was also announced as the new home of Great British Railways. All of these demonstrate our really strong commitment as a council to working with our partners. We really are working with the city for the city, which is set out in our council plan. I'm sure Cabinet would like to say thank you to everyone who has worked for or with the council over the last year, ultimately making a real difference for Derby. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. Any contributions from Cabinet? Councillor Peatfield.
I'd just like to say exactly what Heather suggested that we would say, which is thank you very much for all the contributions over the last year.
Thank you, Councillor Peatfield. Yep, I'll echo Councillor Peatfield's comments. The opening of Moorways is a significant milestone for the city. I would say one of the best municipal facilities of its kind, not just in the region but nationally. Fantastic swimming pool complex and additional activities with the gym and the other facilities there, and still has the potential for a wider sports facility in the area. The winning the bid for GBR, I was talking about that earlier today at the Property Summit, which is a massive boost for the city, and I think it's important to remember we won not just the government evaluation to become the home of GBR and locate the headquarters, but we also won the national public vote on that also, and I'm sure everybody on Cabinet and the rest of the council will work together to make sure we hold whichever government is in power to make sure the ambitions of GBR are delivered in full, benefiting not just Derby but the whole country. Thank you very much for that, Heather. So recommendations are at 2.1 and just 2.1. All those in favour? Thank you, everybody. That concludes the... No, it doesn't conclude the item on the form. Item 15, then. Exclusion of the press and public for the following key decision. The resolution is printed. All those in favour of that resolution? Thank you. You would do the necessary, Karen?